Hello.
Good evening! We're back. Couldn't keep us away forever. Plus, there were far more monumental things happening the last 2 Wednesdays, so we thought we'd let them have the limelight for a bit, and then we'd come.
I don't want to make it sound like we knew what was happening 2 Wednesdays ago.
Fair point.
And we're somehow letting those people have anything.
Fair point.
Hello.
Anyway.
It's most part of the way through January 2021. Today was the inauguration day in the US, which is good news. 2 weeks ago there was an attempted coup or an insurrection in the US, which was bad news and very weird. And the week before that, the UK went into lockdown 3, which is more lockdown than lockdown 2, but not as locked down as lockdown 1. And bear in mind, we've had a whole variety of other things in and around those. So, yeah, just to put this in context, I guess.
Yes, Brexit happened.
Yes.
We left with a deal, and people are finally realising it was shit.
Okay, well now you have to mark the video explicitly.
Or I can just bleep this.
Oh, okay, you're the one who knows.
Post-editing, I have the...
Yes, fish have more freedom of movement than people now. As far as I can tell.
But they're happier because they're now British.
I mean, I suppose fish could always move in 3 dimensions, couldn't they? We're stuck to
True,
2.
yeah.
So fish already had quite a bit of freedom of movement, as it was, just from being fish. But now...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway...
That's where we are. It's one of those things where I sort of feel like you're sort of bracing for it to hit, but I think it's not so much going to hit, it's just going to, like, slowly be more and more rubbish, I guess. But anyway, I guess we'll see how that goes.
Moving on.
Moving on.
And Manuel just turns on as I swear. It does happen. It does happen. Usually when I'm...
Sorry, I thought something more positive. Like, the vaccine is around and going out, and that seems to be something about this whole thing that hasn't been messed up. So, which is good because we needed a win.
Give them a chance.
Well.
Anyway,
yeah.
I think we'll move away from politics and onto back to our format
that we current events.
Okay, yeah. Yes, current events. Things are happening. The world is still the world, and we're still doing this because it's the only way we're seeing people, other than the lovely ladies that run the nursery.
Yeah.
And each other.
Yeah.
And the toddler.
Yeah.
And my dad on the doorstep when he collects his shopping.
You occasionally get livers from other people on the doorstep.
True, yes. Yes, yeah. Have a nice conversation with Neve every now and again.
Yeah.
But yes, that's really we are lacking in a lot of face-to-face contact.
I passed a load of baby clothes on to a friend recently. That was nice. Yeah. I suppose this lockdown it's darker and chillier.
Yes.
Well, yes, because actually I suppose November was dark, but it was also pretty mild actually. The first part of winter was quite mild. Now it's chilly, but we've had some snow.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, not loads, but some. Well, I think some parts of the country are quite a lot, but we didn't have so much here. We are in the middle of a city though, so yeah.
Well, the toddler got to have some fun in the snow.
Yeah,
so.
some fun in the snow. He's old enough to appreciate it now, so that's good. I'm still working from home, pretty much as I have been since late March. So yeah, there's that. We don't have a childcare bubble now because the cases here are much higher than where my parents live. So fairly sensibly, our childcare bubble decided that maybe they'd just stay in their fairly low case rate area in the region. Which
fair enough. We don't blame them for that.
No. So, but there's just a bit more kind of balancing work and parenting, which was a big part of first lockdown. It's just now there's a little bit more expectation. One works one's house.
Yes.
But we'll at least have nursery. So.
Yes, we can. We do send him to nursery, and we are very thankful for that. I'm very thankful for the excellent hard work that they do. Not that they're ever going to hear this, but I still think it's
quite unlikely, but yeah.
Yeah. Although if any of the nursery ladies are watching, we really appreciate what you do. Thank you. we would be a lot greyer and rocky in the corner, I think, if we had to continue working like we've been and look after Nathaniel. So
yes, and then your working situation
My
is very,
working situ-
very changeable, which makes it hard to plan things.
it changed in a week. It changed about 4 times. No, in the first half of the week, it changed 4 times.
There's a 48-hour period from when lockdown was announced on the Monday evening to like before the Thursday, when I think you'd had 3 different ideas of what you might be doing.
Pretty much.
So you did go to a library, as you had been doing for a bit, and then you came back.
It was somewhat confusing. We are, at the moment, I'm working from home. I've just finished a batch of social media training for my colleagues because why not? We were sitting at home and I might as well talk at them for an hour and a half each. So yes, I've done a batch of social media training and we're starting to get an idea of what we'll be doing going forward. So we're going to be offering a books by post service. How this is going to work, well, I shall find out in the next day or so. I'm not holding out much hope of it actually being particularly good, but that's because we're limited by the systems and things we have to work with. So, this will be interesting.
Okay, sure.
But we will do our best to get books out to those who want them, and because that's what we do.
That's fair enough.
But this will involve most likely me going back to a library sometime soon. So.
Yes, I have to see how that goes. We, as well as the lockdown happening, they cancelled the summer exams again. And now we don't know what the assessment will be. Although, last year at short notice it was, all that stuff you processed, now you have to process it for a second time. And it's like, oh, but really? This year, at the moment, it seems to be more like, when will it be happening? Because normally things are on a fairly set, schedule every year for, exams coming out and when things happen. But this year, and I mean last year, things got pushed back a bit after the pandemic started, but that was actually after the main bulk of processing happened. I mean, there's still stuff to do for a couple of months, but it's not the main bulk of it. But this year, stuff's obviously been pushed back earlier on the cycle. Now the exams aren't happening. There are a lot of questions and very few answers. And also we don't know... Well, the answers aren't coming this month, basically, but there's an element of, the stuff we normally do in summer might be at a different point in summer, which is hard to plan. And you just know, so, yeah, the section of the big staff meeting, virtual staff meeting, about the work that I mostly do was very much like, well, these are things that are happening, but there's no clarity on it yet. So that'll be fun later in the year, I guess. Hopefully this year we don't have to do it twice. We just might have to do it at a different time, and hopefully we'll know not quite a while beforehand. But goodness knows. Third lockdown was very kind of like, it was obviously coming, but it was just when and what it would be.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose, since last time we did this, they said one thing for Christmas, then last minute they changed it to a different thing.
Yeah.
And they tried to trap the people in London or something. I'm not, but yeah, they introduced an extra tier that they hadn't had before. So, as with anything, it's all been a bit like short notice. Anyway, veering back into.
Yes, I think we're this is the how are we section.
Yes.
The answer
we're just
is
sitting here seeing things happen, being like, oh, what?
The answer is bemused, confused, but still doing the best we can. So let's move on to a little bit more.
Yes.
What have you been reading?
What have I been reading? Oh, yay. I'm currently reading Network Effect by Martha Wells, which is the Murderbot novel, which is very exciting. I think this actually came out just before my last birthday, which is why I didn't already have it. No, just after my last birthday. Okay. So it says a Murderbot novel, which suggests there might be more. So, the Murderbot, is it Chronicles or series or something? Is something I've liked for quite a long time. Before this one, there were, is it 3 or 4 novellas? There were novellas. There were 4. Yeah. Yes, but before the novel, there were 4 novellas starting with All Systems Red, and then going through. I mean, I definitely recommend it to people. It's a very good series, and it's very well written, and I enjoy it very much. So it's all told from the point of view of the viewpoint character who calls themselves Murderbot. I suppose itself, really. Murderbot is a security unit, or sec unit, which is and a construct, which means that it's like a robot with organic parts, but not quite a cyborg. Because a cyborg is somebody who's a person who gets upgraded, isn't it? Whereas Murderbot's basically a bot, like a robot, but it's got organic parts to it as well. So it looks like a human. But, I mean, normally it'd be an armour and stuff. And it's basically rented out by the company. And it's supposed to just be like a machine, but it can kind of... it does security, so it assesses threats. For people who are going on survey missions on uninhabited planets. But Murderbot specifically manages to hack the thing that controls it. And then for a long time it sort of pretends it's not actually got free will, because it needs to kind of blend in. And it gets a liking for various media. Mostly it seems long-running series like The Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon, which seem to be very dramatic and stuff. Murderbot is a very interesting character to be in the head of... I can't want to say them, because that's what you normally say, but Murderbot does refer to itself as it, specifically. Probably because it spent so long being equipment. Murderbot is very sarky. Murderbot is snarky, sarcastic. It doesn't like making eye contact. It doesn't really like humans, until it finds some that are perhaps more likeable than the others it's encountered. And then saves a load of people. Murderbot's constantly just trying to get its job done and trying to protect humans from the stupid things that humans do. And it obviously resents that, but also not entirely. And there's sort of elements of... it's set in a very sort of far future... Not doing this very well, am I? Out of practice. It's set in a far future... setting where humans have, colonised space, and it's very corporate. But then the one group of humans that Murderbot encounters aren't from a corporation. They're from a political entity, or a non-corporate political entity. So basically like a planet where things seem to be, I guess, pleasant. But then those people don't quite understand how bad the corporations and companies can be. So yeah, it's just... Murderbot's a really engaging character because it clearly has a lot of issues, a lot of anxieties. It's quite snarky and defensive all the time. It clearly cares about stuff, but is sort of annoyed about that. It's like, oh no, I'm having feelings again, or sort of thing. And it sort of tries to be in control of every situation, and obviously isn't, because its whole job is dealing with stuff that's dangerous. And then it's like really kind of blames itself for not doing things, and it's just very relatable, whilst also being quite different. Like there's a bit in this book, I think it's sort of mentioned before, it's that, like, people don't know how to relate to it because it's like if it was poor robot, it wants to be more like a human, maybe people would know what to do with it, but it doesn't want to be like a human. It doesn't like its own organic parts that much, so it's like, oh, okay, which I think was quite interesting because it kind of undercuts the the sort of like data from Next Gen or other ones, like, oh, a robot, but I want to be human, and Murderbot's like, well, I wouldn't want to be human, they're idiots and quite gross. And there's also stuff like it has massive social anxiety, so it doesn't like normally it'd be wearing armour with a faceplate, to the point where people didn't realise how human it looked until the faceplate came off. But it doesn't like making eye contact. The second's really interesting because everyone has something called the feed, which is basically... Well, I guess it's a feeding. So people constantly talking. So there's a lot of communication that isn't happening vocally. It's happening like in computers. But because Murderbot is a bot, it just uses that naturally. So people quite often like pinging videos to each other, and then there's also public comms and closed feeds and stuff like that. And then there's also the fact that Murderbot uses drones. So quite often it's kind of a bit distributed because it can see from different angles. So like that's all in there, but it doesn't feel too confusing. So, but yes, the Murderbot books are like really fun. I've heard people describe it as competence porn as well, because again, Murderbot is actually very competent at what it does, because that's the main thing it's been programmed to do. But it also has like a good personality around that, as well as a lot of flaws and insecurities, which just make it really likeable. Because you're like, no, fair enough. So yeah, Murderbot books.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm interested to see how the full novel goes, because each of the novellas kind of pick up one after the other. So they kind of pick straight up after each other, and this kind of is later, but it refers back to things from the novellas. So it's a series I think you want to read in order. It's very serialised. But yeah.
I should have to have a go at that at some point.
Yes, well, they're all upstairs.
Yeah, I know they're all upstairs. I mean, that's fair enough.
What have you been reading?
Obviously, we've had a bit of time. So last time we did this, I was reading Harry the Ninth, which I have finished, which was really quite odd, but kind of what I expected from that. I think once the trilogy's finished, I think we're going to have to go back and reread them. So I think there's a lot going on, and might have missed a few things. But yeah, another excellent novel, well worth a read. But then again, the at least 50% of the audience at the moment has read them. So Manel suggested them to me.
Okay, sure.
After I'd already read the first one, so we're on the same wavelength here at least. So, third book coming out at some point, which I can't remember the name of now, but that should be interesting, given how the last one ended. So, what have I read since then? I read, and I didn't bring them downstairs because that would have made me competent at this. The Bear and the Serpent by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's the second book in his Animals series. I can't remember actually if he's got a series. The first one being Wolf and Tiger. A world where everyone has an animal soul. Yes, Electo the Ninth. Yes, something like that. It's something the Ninth. Yeah. So yes, it has an animal soul and allows them to shapeshift into that animal.
Were people then, I guess.
Yes, everyone's a were person. And the first book is follows. I can't pronounce her name. Mani. The child of a wolf and a tiger, who has the ability to shapeshift into both, and her struggles of conflicting natures and things. So that was quite good. So I've obviously read the second book, which is more of the same, more shape-shifting people. But this time there's a big external threat that was looming in the first one, and we start seeing a bit more of it. So yes, I will have to check out the rest of that series. I also read a novella, Zen Cho's novella, Pure Moon, something that's not very helpful.
Like reflected in pure water or something?
Something like that, yes. It's a novella by Zen Cho. Zen Cho. Yes, sorry.
That's right.
And it's a short novella about it kind of is a fantasy world, but really you're looking at it is a Chinese feudal world, where it's obviously the fantasy elements, but it's so small in scope, you don't really see anything around. Very reminiscent to sort of classic kung fu style film, but without the kung fu. There's fights in it, but you don't get any descriptions of what's happening. It's an interesting one. If you liked a little bit of I was primarily reading it to review it for work, so I will have to go back and do a better job of reviewing it for work, and then you can all listen to my review for work, and I can get some hits out of it. And I have just started last night the latest Charles Stross Laundry Files book, That Which Lies Dreaming, something like that. Basically, it's a world where currently the UK is ran by Nyarlathotep. So basically doing a better job than the government we have right now. Wow, this is getting very political for us.
Yes, you
Yeah.
started again.
Yeah, so Charles Stross, interestingly, has been writing this series for many years now. It's about a secret organisation called the Laundry, Special Operations, basically to control the occult. The idea that demons can be summoned by advanced computations, and computers can cause portals into demons coming out and things. So it's supernatural Cthulhu mythos with high tech satire, and he likes to riff off various things. So we've seen elves, we've seen unicorns. Man, that unicorn story.
Was that the short story?
That was the short story.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only one I've read because it was in the Hugo packet in, I guess it must have been 2012 when we went to the World Cup. Yeah, that was a
thing. Yeah. And various other supernaturally things he takes off. So the first ones are kind of riffs off James Bond, Len Denton, spy novels.
Oh, I thought it was all Lovecrafty stuff.
It is Lovecraft as well as these things.
Because Lovecraft's actually in that short story, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it combines lots of things, but it does work well. And you initially followed Bob, which isn't his actual name. It's just what he's using in this record he's keeping of things that happen to him as he goes from being IT tech to the Laundry, into being a field agent, and his I say rise to power. It's kind of accurate, but yeah. So interesting. First one being the Atrocity Archives. I remember that name. Which again, well worth it. I feel sorry for Charles Stross because he's been writing these for years, and before the last one came out, Brexit happened and all the crap that happened around that. He had to rewrite half of the book because what he thought was satire, what he thought was taking the piss, ended up being
too close to home.
More reasonable than actually a response that our actual government ended up having to things. So he had to go rewrite it to make it almost worse, but basically make it more ridiculous. Yeah, he's had a lot of problems writing these books through recent years. But yes, well worth a read. Like a lot of things we read, well worth it. And if you can get the Atrocity Archives, start there, because otherwise you won't understand what the hell's going on. Okay. We managed to kill a lot of time with that.
Yeah. We haven't said what we're working on, I realise.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm working on Sazabi, because
it's that same robot again.
I'm nearly finished.
It's back.
It's back. Everyone loves my Sazabi. I'm working on his backpack at the moment. There we go. The funnels go in it, and he gets two big fuel tanks on the back, and he gets to go whoosh. There we go. So, Cathy, what are you working on? Which is going to be
you can probably kind of see a bit. Yes, so I decided late last year, after sort of chatting to people online and stuff a bit, that I would take up cross stitch this year. And so far it's been quite nice and fairly calming, so that's good. So yes, I have some cross stitchy things for Christmas. So yes, and I've watched various videos online, and also Marguerite on Twitter, she was doing a sort of thread of various things that she does that was handy. So that's nice. And I've got various friends who do it, so I can chat to people. I haven't done a lot of chatting to people about it yet. I'm kind of still getting into it, but yeah. So I did some little birds to begin with. That kind of as practice. I'm not very good at figuring out where things need to go yet, but spacing has never been my strong point. Like, spatial awareness is not something I'm great at. And now I'm trying a bigger one, although I cut this too small, I think. I think it needs to be more on the edges. I think that's probably because a lot of the videos I was watching were Americans on YouTube doing it, and they said 2 inches. And I was like, okay, and then later I cut it, I just remembered 2, not which thing it wasn't. The pattern is European, I think, because it was in centimetres, so I just added a couple of centimetres, and it's like, no, you need to add 5 centimetres, because that's 2 inches. But anyway, I'll figure it out. Yes, I've watched a lot of videos about starting, but not about how you finish it. So when I'm done, I'm like, oh, what do I do now? So I'll look that up when I'm done, or later, or see what other people are doing. Probably should start chatting a bit more about this online. Yeah, people I already know, friends. But yes, it's alright so far. So at the moment I'm working on, it's in a hoop. I didn't use a hoop with these because they're small, but this one I'm kind of just getting into using the hoop. But yes, I don't know if you can tell what that is yet. It's it's a strange deer, but it only has 3 colours. That seemed quite good because you got me a kit, and my mum gave me a kit that she hadn't used because she'd not got into it, I think, very much when she tried before. And they both have like a lot of colours all over.
I just picked something that looked cool that said the good for beginners. I can't be held responsible if Amazon have lied to me.
No, that's fair enough. Well, I think it would be fine. I just thought I'd do. Yeah, this one only has 3 colours, so it's larger, but it's only 3 colours. I also have one pattern that's like a scene, and that seems to have quite a few. But this one's just 3, and they're kind of all over. So yeah, I'll see how I go. I'm mostly doing all right. Sometimes I'm getting a bit messy at the back with it, or I'm having to unpick things. But it's quite easy to do that, and it's nice and orderly because you have a plan. And you have your thing, and you just have to kind of count squares and figure out how you're doing it a bit, but it's not too taxing. Like, the felt stuff I was doing is good, but I'm kind of making all that up like completely by myself. And everything, like all the... It's not really patterns, so it's just me drawing things and cutting them out and stuff, so that's a lot more on the fly, but sometimes if I can't think of what I'm doing next, then I don't do it, because it's not like there's something for me to follow, I guess, whereas this is all like instructions are there for you. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
Excellent.
It's also something I can kind of like do while I'm watching TV, and like I can look a bit, but I can still pay some attention and stuff. So I'm to do with my hands, like you're always doing something. So.
Yeah, I try to. I usually can put a model together or do something like this because.
Maybe it's just nice to have a little bit of order and consistency at the moment as well.
Yes. Where this tells us what to stick to where, it's all good.
Just follow the instructions. It'll all be fine. Yes.
And you get something nice at the end of it that we can put on display somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's enough my random stuff that I've done, so.
That's true. Although again, I've not figured out how that bit works. So.
Well,
I may have messed it up slightly. We'll see how we go.
I'm sure you haven't. I'm sure it's perfectly.
It'll probably be fixable.
Yes.
It's fabric. You say things. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yes. So what we don't have one particular sort of piece of media or anything to focus on today. So what we were going to do was we were going to sort of look back over 2020.
We're trying to look back over the positive things in 2020.
We're looking back over, I guess, things that we read or watched that we liked.
Yes. Things we might not do a whole thing about, but we thought we might, So, shall we start with the one that comes to mind immediately for me? Just because...
I wrote some headings, which I hadn't showed you, but,
Oh, someone's more organised than me there. Which wouldn't take much.
I mean, I literally did it like a few minutes before we started, but yeah.
So, one of the things, so it's from the tail end of last year, or sort of Christmas, that everyone was going on about Queen's Gambit.
Yes, true, okay.
So, if you haven't seen that, that's a Netflix miniseries all about chess. More accurately, about a young woman who's a chess prodigy, or haunted by chess, as Cathy likes to refer to it as.
So, it's basically a whole series set in between the 50s and 70s?
Yes.
Maybe something like that. Or was it the 60s? It's a bit confusing how old she is because they have a child actor for the beginning bits, and then when she's a teenager they change it to the adult actor. At one point somebody's lying about her age because she gets adopted and they pretend she's younger than she is, and I'm like, this woman is clearly in her 20s, but alright, it just makes it a bit confusing. But yes, it's basically this girl ends up in an orphanage after a fairly horrible accident, and she clearly had a very difficult childhood with her mother who had various issues. And in this orphanage they give the children tranquilizers every day, so she gets hooked on those. And then she sees the caretaker playing chess and she's interested in it, and then she starts like basically dreaming about chess and visualizing it, and then I was like, is this like if she was haunted by a game? And then basically it's about how her life kind of improves when she gets adopted and things, but she also starts, she gets really good at chess, and then she starts entering tournaments and becomes master level and goes to all these national and then international competitions. And then later I was like, this is like a whole program about if like a load of people were haunted by a game. These people that are all haunted or possessed by a game. I think early on it just was a bit eerie because she's in like this sort of orphanage and it seemed a bit... Oh, I suppose it was only girls, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And there's stuff like, it's the 60s and it's very fashionable and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff about how the fact that she is an addict as well. Just think she's an addict, but partly because she was brought up by it, just because they gave them tranquilizers at the orphanage. And then, yeah, when she's older, it's just like various other addictive things.
Pretty much everything, alcohol and drugs.
Although the bit where she's supposed to be like hitting rock bottom, she still looks absolutely glamorous. The thing
Yes.
it's very glamorous. Like, I mean, I've not checked anyone's name in this. We've been working. I'm busy. The main actress, whose name you can look up if you want to, because I failed. She's very pretty. I think she's in modelling as well. Maybe.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Or she looks like she could do. But it's all very stylised and stylistic, and obviously, it's odd because there's times when the mood feels like it's getting a bit black, but it never goes really that. Like it's getting dark at various points, but it doesn't actually go black. And there's a few times when like bad things do happen, but nothing. Well, there's only one thing that's really terrible, and that you can't see coming.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose at the starting thing's pretty terrible as well, but yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. It's actually the guy who wrote or produced it was shopping around. He was shopping around for decades, literal decades, and everyone's like, "Well, we're not going to make a show about chess." What? And like Heath Ledger, before he died, he was looking to direct it. So you know that so it's been around a while, just kind of like making the rounds and not being developed, but obviously that was really popular. Yeah, I think it's just it's very stylish and it's sort of like has a bit of darkness to it without being too dark. But then there's also somebody said it's kind of almost a bit utopic because you've got this young woman who's this chess prodigy, and who goes really far. And like there's a few times where people underestimate her, and like I think there's one time when the press ask her a question about like, oh, is she being a bit glamorous or something, and she's a bit like, you know, but it's not even that sexist. It's only a slightly sexist question considering it's 1970 something. And then it's about all these people who want to help her. So like when she's obviously being a bit addicted and stuff, like people keep turning up and being like, oh, are you all right? And there's a lot of people helping her, which is nice. But like all these men help her as well. Like, oh, we must help her to succeed. It's like as somebody saying it's like that. I mean, it's nice. It doesn't seem terribly realistic, and it's like, yeah, like why aren't they all stropping and undermining her and stuff like that? I mean, again, it's nice that it's not like that. But like there's actually real life. Well, there's a family of three daughters who are real life chess pros because their father trained them in chess when they were like from children upwards, and the I think it was the eldest. One of them, you know, who's a real life chess pro. There was a thing that said, oh, she never beat a well man because every single man she beat would say, oh, I had a headache at that time. Oh, my back was hurting. Oh, there was always something, which is why a woman had beaten them. And in this, it's almost not mentioned. It's like everyone's just focused on chess. Yeah. As I say, it's sort of nice. Well, again, feeling very stylized.
But I think in some ways that's why it was so.
Just make it enjoyable.
You know, the dark bits aren't very dark.
That's true. They're not really. It's not darkness about her being a woman, is it?
No.
Which I think could easily have been put in there by people. You know, if
I think it's just, you know, and you can certainly see why people, you know, as it's stylish, just enjoyable. You know, seeing someone succeed, and you know they made the chess matches interesting.
Yeah, you don't have to know chess already. They'll say things like bishop to queen's thing 6 or whatever, and you're like, alright, fine. But then they show how the different tournaments are. So in some places they've got, because there'll be people doing tournament and there'll be people around watching, and then they might have a board up. And in some places they were doing like, you know, just sticking them on with Velcro, and some they had like proper little wooden pegs they were moving around, and and stuff. But I think most of the tension comes from whether she will sabotage herself.
Yes.
It's kind of more an internal tension with the kind of like very compulsive parts of her personality, and it's not. There's only a limited amount of external threat, really.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the year, that's why it was so popular. It was not. It wasn't a terrible. Nothing, as I say, nothing really terrible happened. And
well, there's dark currents in it, but it's not. It's never too bad, really, or at least I guess stuff gets terrible after it. But yeah.
So that was good. We enjoyed that one.
Yes. I was going to mention. I know you didn't watch it, but Lucifer, because that was something I was watching myself, and I've now gone through all of it. Because it's just one of these things people have been talking about for years, and some people still talking about a bit. And I mean, I've read, I think, the first 2 graphic novels. Obviously, I've read.
Sorry, Queen's Gambit did not come out at Christmas. It was Bridgerton that came out at Christmas.
Yes, I kept thinking we said in the year. I was thinking it was earlier in the year. We didn't watch it as soon as Queen's Gambit because Bridgerton we've only watched this year.
Yeah, no, I was just going. Yeah, it came out earlier.
Right,
It's still on Netflix.
I suppose we watched it on the 31st. But yeah, I wasn't kind of counting that. But
no, that's fine. I was just getting confused.
Yeah, no, Queen's Gambit came out a few months ago.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think the problem is that much though a hell of a lot of stuff happened in 2020, a colleague was saying the other day it feels quite quick. And I think that's because you don't go anywhere. So all of your like short to mid to memory is in the same location and the same sort of day, because you can't just have, that was the day we went there as like a milestone. So anyway, yes. Yeah, we didn't watch it as soon as it came out, but we watched it. I think people were still largely talking about it. Right, so Lucifer, which is the point out with Nick.
Sorry.
That's all right. I've been seeing people talk about it for a few years, and I knew it would change from being on Prime to being on Netflix. So I watched the stuff on Prime, and then we moved over to Netflix and stuff. And yeah, it's interesting because I know when it first came out, people were a bit like, "Wait, it's like Mike Carey's Lucifer graphic novels, but based on." But like it's like a police procedural. How would that be? And I could see you'd be a bit like, "Yes, how would that be?" But it turns out actually quite good. So basically, it's kind of taking off of the appearance of Lucifer in Neil Gaiman's Sandman. And in fact, Gaiman's credited and Carey's credited. Well, all the Sandman, sort of the original 3 creators. So Gaiman, Dringenberg, and Keith. And then also Mike Carey, obviously. And yeah, it's basically like the devil left hell because he's fed up of it. And he went to LA and opened a nightclub. And then the bartender is a demon called Mazikeen. And that's sort of about the main similarity. And then he's been living there a hedonistic life.
Panel says the answer is that it has basically nothing whatsoever to do with the graphic novels, which I kind of guessed was the...
Well, yeah, Neil Gaiman was a narrative voiceover in like a weird sort of alternate world episode, alternate history episode. In the first series, they do at one point they have like they're looking for a bad guy called Mike Carey or something. Or no, they have a guy called Mike Carey Sharp. In that same episode, also somebody go, "You're supposed to be blonde," because it's being played by Tom Ellis, who's not blonde, and who's actually a very good actor because he's also the guy in Miranda, and it's just entirely different. I don't know if I could watch that now; it'd be weird. But yeah, so the devil's living this very sexually charged life in LA because his thing is desire. So he can, if he looks at somebody's eyes, he can ask what they desire, and they'll just tell him. And he's also just like really into sex and stuff, which is fine. But it's sort of it's not like devil like evil. It's like devil like rebelling against authority. He's always going on about Dad and how awful he is, and just a massive chip on his shoulder. And basically he starts helping out a detective from the LAPD, and she doesn't seem to be affected by his powers, which intrigues him. And then he gets a therapist who starts chatting to her, and it's very procedural, but like the whole thing is that you've got these 2 characters that are in this like very, very slow burn romance. And I have some people who've been watching it saying, never have I wanted to just yell, "Kiss, just kiss" at the screen so much. And yeah, it's the police procedural aspect of it. It's very procedural. Like there are various points from like, that's the person they met at the crime scene who they immediately discounted for some reason, so they are the murderer. Or occasionally it's a bit like they've actually investigated this person and ruled them out, so they're not, it's like, if they've ruled them out at this point, they won't be the murderer. It's like, but if they met them at the crime scene, but there was a fairly plausible reason for them to be there, so they didn't ask them much more other than who do you think might have done this and followed that lead, that person will be the murderer. Almost always. But it introduces those stuff, so you have, like, Kane, who turns up, but again, he's quite different to the comics. Well, very much. There's still a mark on him. And you have some supernatural stuff. You have angel characters, so you have Lucifer's brother Menadil, who's the sort of eldest angel, and you have their mother shows up, so she's just the goddess of creation. It's just the idea that there was God and goddess, and this just says, well, it was called the Big Bang. And the character of Lucifer's odd because he's kind of amoral to begin with, but then he starts sort of seeing sort of murdery stuff, and it's like, well, this isn't right. And then, like, there's a thing with, like, there's this devil worshipping cult, and he's like, no, this isn't in my name. He gets really angry, and he's kind of invulnerable to, like, weapons and gunfire and stuff, which makes him useful. It's also interesting because this whole thing, he never lies. So he'll just say, oh yes, I'm the devil. It's like, and he goes around, like, his name's Lucifer Morningstar. It's like, when people are a bit like, oh, it's LA, it's like a weird conceit, but actually he's like, no, I'm actually literally the devil, and everyone's like, oh, it's just a weird metaphor he does. And then gradually more and more people are a bit like his wings will come out, or they'll see his devil face, and it's like, oh no, he's the devil, oh no. So yeah, there's kind of like supernatural stuff to it as well, but yeah, it's reasonably fun, and yeah, it's just something to keep me occupied. Is there any other TV stuff we wanted to talk about?
We'll mention Doctor Who, because obviously that we watched at the start of the year. We saw the first a series.
I thought it definitely wasn't 2020.
But also we
or we just doing stuff up until now.
no, but there was last year's New Year's Day special, and I was only going to talk about it briefly because I can't remember what was going on.
I don't know if anyone else has this. I find it really hard to remember which things were beginning of 2020 and which things were 2019. And I'm like, well, it was when I was going to work, but like, what? But yeah.
So obviously we did see the Doctor Who series that was last year, as well as the New Year's Day specials. While we've watched all of the new Who. Somehow I'm not being as excited by this new stuff, and it's not because I think it's bad. I mean, I enjoyed watching it, but it's not. I don't know.
Honestly, I find Doctor Who quite variable personally.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I've
watched it and enjoyed it, but it just has lost to something. Possibly just because it's been going on for so long now. It just seems to have lost a little bit of sparkle, and certainly for me. And
I think
the fact I can't necessarily remember what happened in the last series, other than the Timeless Child stuff.
Yeah, there is that, but like I felt like that at various bits when Moffat was doing it as well, and a little bit of Rusty Davis. I suppose it was newer then. Like, I don't know. I suppose it's gone through different. As well as obviously going through different doctors and different actors and companions, it's also gone through like different modes of like who the showrunner is and what kind of stories they're writing, and how much is episodic or how much there's like a mild thread, or how much it's supposed to be very serialised, but then yet everyone's emotions don't make sense. So I think I've always felt a bit like that Doctor Who. And also there's always the fact that like it's the Dalek episode. It's like, oh, the Time Lords and Daleks wiped each other out, except they didn't wipe out the Daleks. So the Daleks won the time where, I'm sorry, like no one's acknowledging it, but the guys are everywhere, and there's always like millions of them. And it's like, but the Doctor can defeat millions of them, so sort of millions of them compared to the Doctor is a bit like, well, okay.
Yeah,
it's probably just me not having the old Who feels, but I'm a bit like, oh, it's Daleks again. All right, I guess we'll just try and do something a bit different with them.
Yeah, so what?
That's just me.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was I say no, it wasn't necessarily it's a bad thing of last, but to watch, but. And I'll be interested to see the new series, but somehow it's just lost its. Ooh, have you that kind of almost the excitement of? Or have you seen the latest Doctor Who episode? What do you?
I mean, we've all been very tired, and there's a lot going on. Also.
Well, I suppose so, but
and also like. it's a family show, and like I wonder if it'll be more exciting when our son's old enough to actually watch it with, you know.
Yes.
Like, it's not. And I've seen people say, like, some people who were Who fans from the the earlier series, have said, "Oh, it doesn't feel like it's for them anymore." But it's like that's fine because that's not necessarily who. It's a family show, so if adults like it, that's nice. But
yeah,
it's not.
I'm happy.
It's
enough.
kind of more a kind of general spread of audience, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought I would just mention it because obviously it's that's the parts I need. Oh. I threw the sprues in the wrong box.
Also, there's more stuff to watch now as well.
I suppose there is, yes.
Before it used to be a bit more like, well,
we do have.
There's like 4 or 5 sci-fi shows that we are all watching now. It's a bit like there's like a dozen, and some of us are all watching different ones. Not even all sci-fi.
Yeah, so there is a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we've got our queue of things to watch at the moment is quite long, so. And then we get distracted by things that weren't in the queue, so.
Yes.
Any other TV that we've watched or films?
Film sort of feels a bit tricky because we only would watch them on TV.
Yeah, I mean,
Not that we were doing loads of cinema before anyway. But.
No, I can't remember actually what literally the last one we saw was.
Would it have been Star Wars?
It might have been Star Wars, yes. So I don't think...
What Marvel film?
No, because there wasn't anything.
In the first part of 2020.
No, because it was it was going to be Black Widow.
Oh, okay.
That was the next one to come out.
I felt surprisingly excited about that.
Oh yeah.
They should have done it several years before,
Well,
shouldn't they? That's the problem.
That's...
Like, here's the thing about a character who's dead. I know it's Marvel and no one's dead forever, but it's a bit like, well, okay.
I'll be interesting to see what they, what backstory they're fleshing out for her. But it does cut, it's a bit of a shame that her story's now done, and now they go, oh look at this cool backstory we have for her. It's
like we wanted a Black Widow film back when they came out with Winter Soldier. You're quite late, sirs. You're quite late.
Yeah.
It feels like backwards rather than forwards. And bearing in mind that Marvel obviously has a lot of time stuff, like you can do something that feels forward by going backwards if you look at like Captain Marvel. But but that was still kind of progressing things, or you kind of look back, but then it was like a new thing. But yeah.
Yeah. So that's buttering about something that.
Yeah, I can't really think of films because also like we don't tend to sit down and watch anything long form because I feel like this year a lot of people talk about you can just binge stuff, and it's like, well, I don't think our ability to binge has been much affected really.
No.
Like we binged on New Year's because it's like, well, we're going to stay until midnight, so we've got more time. But normally it's a bit like, oh, this thing is 2 hours long or close to 2 hours. I don't know when I'm watching that, but I think that's probably more a parent thing.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice at the point where Nathaniel can understand the concept of wanting to stay in bed have a lie in and not want to get up as soon as.
Well, I don't think I'll be watching films then, though.
No, but we could then have lie-ins more.
Oh, okay.
Because at the moment we have to be up.
Yeah, well, yeah.
A bit more when he
was. I think we get up later than quite a lot of families, though, so it's not too bad. He's mostly a good sleeper. Yes. So books.
Of course, a lot of them covered a lot. So obviously, I think a lot of them we've mentioned because we were reading them at the time.
Yeah.
I think
I was trying to think of what did I read like June and earlier, and that's when I started thinking what was 19 and what was 20.
I think from my point of view, one of sort of the nice finds of the year was the Anthony Ryan sort of Dragon series. That was an unexpected. Obviously, I had the books. I had the first one, but I kind of had it as a let's see what this is like. And obviously, I thoroughly enjoyed them, so I thought that was a nice unexpected surprise. And obviously, I've been through that entire series. So what were some of your highlights of the?
Again, I want to mention here. So obviously there was the Zen Cho book that I read twice, which was The True Queen. But that's because the universe made me. Like, I had a dream that basically felt like one of her books, and then also a character with an unusual name turned up in a completely unrelated context in my work with a name that I don't think you just see around. And I was like, oh, okay, right after the dream. So I was like, well, I think that's just telling me. But I mean, that was one that kind of rewarded rereading, because I think I've been a bit dense about parts of it. Well, there's kind of like one thing that sort of seems like a mystery to the characters, but you as the reader kind of know what's happening. But then there's other stuff, more like emotional stuff, that I just completely not quite picked up on the first read. And I was like, oh, so reading it again, it was like nice to see how that was built up. So yeah, so that was good. And I should read that novella you've got at the moment.
Yeah, I'd say it's.
I've liked all of Zen stuff that I've read, so.
It's a nice short.
Also, I've seen her describe the sort of not quite rationale, but kind of like what she was kind of aiming for a bit in writing it on Twitter, which just sounded intriguing. And then let's see. Oh, obviously, there's the Mary Robinette Kowal series that we both read. We've read less. Oh, have you caught up with me now?
No, I've only read the first one. So.
Okay, yeah, because I read the second one, and you read the first one, the second one's around. So the Lady Astronaut series, and then there's a third one that I've forgotten the name of again. No. So that's quite good, and I think yes, because I was reading, because obviously there's stuff for people in space, and obviously space is quite confining. And there's a bit where people got ill, and you're like, oh no. Yes, so there was that. I keep thinking things, and I'm pretty sure it was last year? Not last year, the year before last. 19. And yeah, there's been various books I've enjoyed. I'm trying to think if I read the previous Murderbot novella, but I think that might have been 19. There's a Sean Maguire books I quite like, the Wayward Children series. That's really good. I enjoyed that a lot. Although I think the most recent one I read I didn't enjoy quite as much as some of the previous ones. But again, I can't remember if I read those like early 20 or late 19. There's the Natalie Haynes book. The one about Troy.
Oh, yes.
Yes. See, the problem is that Pat Barker had a book called Silence of the Women, and then Natalie Haynes had a book... Oh, A Thousand Ships, that was it. So they're both retellings of the kind of story of Troy, or kind of the Iliad and stuff surrounding it, from the point of view of women in it. And I read them reasonably close together. The Natalie Haynes one was because I guess it must have been 19, I went to a talk she was doing, and she was amazing. And I just really enjoyed that. I thought she was great, and I really should listen to her radio programme, but I'm not a big radio listener, but I should really find it and listen to it. Because a friend of ours who does listen to a lot of radio said it was good. And that was good. And then so I had her book, which was signed because it was at the event, and I thought, it's amazing, I'm going to go buy her book. And then you, I think, got me the Pat Barker one.
Yes.
But obviously they're quite similar.
Yeah.
And also, they're quite difficult reads, because it's about Troy, and the women, and, like, it's about a brutal war, and obviously you've got all the heroism of the blokes doing stuff, but one of the things that Homer did, that I think is why it's enduring, is he does mention the kind of, like, the precariousness of the female characters and stuff like that, and the different roles people have, and how the war affects different people in different ways. So one of them was very, like, kind of going through, like, sort of flitting about to different people, and then one of them was following a bit more of a line, but there was a lot of, like, they both had lots of little bits, they had slightly different focuses, but both of them had some pretty brutal stuff. And I mean, there's one where all the women of Troy it keeps going back to them being on a beach, and all these noble women who are all relatives, they're all like the mother, Hecuba, and then her daughters and daughters-in-law are all just sitting there waiting for the Greeks to decide what to do with them and stuff. So yeah.
Not a fun light read, though.
No. But, interesting. But I think I read this a few months apart because we went to, in March, beginning of March 2020, we went to an exhibition at the British Museum about Troy, which I think is why certainly I'd read one of them, and then the other one I thought, I'd better read this perhaps before we go. It's getting very rainy here, there's like a storm. That was interesting, wasn't it? Looking back. Having gone to London. We went to London for a day, so we went to go to this exhibition, and then we saw a friend from uni and met his daughter. And then we were sort of saying to ourselves, as we came back on the train, perhaps in May we should book a week off, and we should go with the the little one and go to the zoo and the museums and things, and see what, if we're there for a few days, we can see what other people we can meet up with, because we do know a few people in London. And then there was one businessman or guy in a suit at the exhibition who was wearing a mask, and then we were all just, it was very crowded, and we were all just like leaning close to read the stuff. So and in hindsight, it's like, what was that?
The time
I think
before.
It was the 3rd of March or something.
Yeah.
So it was like
the before times.
Yeah, but within 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Bit surreal.
Yeah. By contrast, and that week in May came, and I just kind of hit a wall. But yeah. So that was something we did in 2020 that was nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, January was kind of good because we had a potluck with a load of friends one week, and the following week we had a birthday party, and there were like 8 3- and 4-year-olds and their parents in here, which again feels just so strange now. And that was quite a bit of organising, but it was good, and yes, so
fun was had by all.
Yeah.
Yes, different times though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm actually coming up with trying to think of actually other books I've read.
I've come up with stuff that's not books.
Yeah, I'll have to.
So, yeah, we can also talk about it. What time is it?
No, it's actually coming up to heart attack.
Okay, so right.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to mention that I've found quite in 2020 podcasts. So I've always, that's not true. I have for many years listened to podcasts regularly. And I've had like ones I'd listen to on my commute, and that means less listening since I've had the little one, because obviously from taking him somewhere I'm not listening to other stuff. But yeah, so I've always had like usually a mixture of fiction, non-fiction. It kind of went for like the fiction stuff's mostly science fiction, fantasy. Well, it's mostly escape artists podcasts, and then I was listening to Lightspeed magazine for a while as well. And then the non-fiction started out as a lot of quite kind of geeky SF focused stuff, but it's kind of broadened to a few different things. So I was listening to In Our Time because that's usually quite interesting, even if it's something I don't massively understand, like a sciencey or mathsy one. And then in must have been summer of 19, because we went to an event at the castle with a friend, and there was actually an event on at the castle. A friend was recommending Rex Factor, which is a podcast that rates, starts off rating all the monarchs of England from Alfred the Great to Elizabeth II. And then they went on to the monarchs of Scotland, and now they're doing the consorts of England, so the Queen and Prince consorts. So that's a really good podcast. It's quite a lot of fun. And I was listening to that, I think I must have started kind of late 19, and didn't do it immediately after it was recommended to me, but I did look it up. And then when I started working from home, I was quite often in a room where there was children's TV in the background, so I kind of needed something to drown it out. So I started listening to them like one after the other. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts a day, and it's very conversational. Which is these 2 guys sort of talking about the stuff they're quite interested in. One guy's really researched it and knows exactly, knows all the stuff, and the other guy doesn't really know and is asking questions and is sort of taking on the role of. I think he's actually like that. He's really into history, and he did a history degree actually at the same university that I did, but I think a bit before. Some sort of shiny lady thing.
Yes.
But he doesn't always remember stuff, so there's a certain amount of like clarifying things, and yeah. So I mean that podcast actually started like in 10 years ago, so it's sort of odd every time they mention something recent, like contemporary to them, you're like, oh okay. But so let's go through that. And then there's various similar podcasts that came up out of that where people look at different things and ranking them. So the other ones I listened to was Totalus Rankium, who were ranking Roman emperors, and their first series was the Western Empire, so it was from Augustus to Augustulus. And then when the West properly fell, they went on to do the Eastern Empire, so it was from Augustus to Constantine 11. But I've now caught up with them. They're taking a bit of a break at the moment. So I've kind of caught up on both of these. So I was listening to those podcasts a lot because they're just... For a while I found I couldn't listen to fiction podcasts, not early on, not in first lockdown. I just kind of couldn't seem to do it. It takes a different kind of listening, I think. Whereas facty stuff... so for a long time I've been listening to No Such Thing as a Fish, and I've been to most of the shows they've done in Birmingham. So that's one that's quite... they're the people who are researchers for the QI. So every so often you watch QI and I mention something, you'd be like, this was on the podcast. But yeah, that's just a lot of sort of four very knowledgeable people whose job is researching stuff, sort of chatting about things, and so that's quite fun, but it's a bit sweary. The history podcasts I do aren't sweary, but history's full of a lot of unpleasant things happening, particularly Roman stuff. So, yeah. But that's good because it's two people who are friends, sort of chatting to each other about this and just get really interested. And it's not like I'm listening because I have a test in this or I have to write an essay on it or anything. So if I zone out for a bit because I am actually working at the same time or I sort of missed a bit, that's fine. Because there'll probably be a catch up later because both podcasts have the guy does the research and the guy doesn't really know what's happening. So the guy doesn't really know what's happening, won't remember. And in fact, the one podcast make thing going, well, everyone's been listening. This happened 20 minutes ago, but it's been a few weeks for us, so this is where we were. So and sometimes if you realise you've missed something that sounded a bit funny, you can go back. And the one podcast plays it reasonably straight. The other podcast does a lot of silly. They can do skits and things at the end and stuff and funny voices and yeah. But they've both got their own kind of feel to them and they actually had an interview episode where they were interviewing people from other podcasts, and the one where it's both of those podcasts I listened to was absolutely hilarious. Well, they're all pretty funny, but yeah. So that's those are kind of getting through, but now I've caught up on everything. It's oh no. I mean, the guys that do the Roman Emperor and also do American Presidents one, and I'm kind of should I listen to that? Maybe it'll feel safer to listen to American President stuff now.
I was going to say, you've got a while to go before doing it, for.
Well, the one guy, the guy who does the research, was saying, he's stuff keeps happening, it's already 3 podcasts long, when I get to 45. It's also interesting listening to podcasts that are going, you're sort of listening you're listening over the course of months, and it's taking years, because then you can start telling where they've got to, and then they say things, you're like, oh no, poor people in December 2019, you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
Which also happened in the other podcast I did, I was actually on the jury for the British Fantasy Awards sort of podcast category. So that's where I did get back into listening a bit of fiction because it was part of that. So myself and a few other people were juried. So the members nominated works. So the initial round is nominations, and then you get the top 4 finalists based on the number of nominations, and then those are decided by a jury. And they've been doing that for quite a few years because there was a bit of a hoo-ha about how that award was judged. Well, the year we sort of started going to conventions, so a while ago. So yes, I mean this year we were planning to go to conventions and things. And
yes.
Didn't happen. So I guess it's sort of nice to feel like you're sort of involved in that. So yeah, so that meant listening to some podcasts I hadn't listened to before. So that's another thing, I might pick up some of those a bit more. As well as there was one that I'd listened to for, throughout most of 19, so that was sort of familiar, but then other stuff wasn't. So that was quite good. And then me and the other jurors who I don't think any of us really knew each other. Weren't people I'd known before, but it was nice to just kind of have a little bit of a chat with people you've not met before. Because again, how often is that happening now? I mean, obviously it's virtual, but yes. So I don't think the results have been announced yet. Everything's been very delayed.
Yeah.
Which again is absolutely fair enough given the circumstances. It's not like there's a convention to aim for.
No.
So yes. So I know which one that one, but anyway. But that was quite good, and it was also quite interesting because one of the so there was podcasts that I've been listening to for absolutely years, I'm very familiar with, and then there was Pseudopod, which is the horror one of Skater Artist, which I wasn't listening to because I don't really consider myself to be a horror fan. So I was slightly wary about that. But actually listening to it, I did feel that I perhaps not understood the kind of range of stuff that they do, which was dumb really, because Escape Pod, Podcastle and Castle Wonders do such a range of things. So of course Pseudopod does. But I think also, like, my thinking of horror is usually a bit like they're trying to scare you or make you feel grossed out. And actually, although they probably were trying to scare you, there wasn't that much stuff that I thought was really gross. Or, like... I mean, I guess maybe it's a bit different to reading it also as well. But, yeah, it was... Yeah, so I think that's opened my eyes a bit. So I think I'd be a bit more open to some, like, maybe horror in audio form. I mean, there aren't sound effects, which might be helpful. And it was summer, so it was sunny and light most of the time. But I am a big wuss. But yeah, no, that was quite interesting though, because they had a few different things. But again, and also we know the main host as well, so it was nice to hear from him. But again, there was a certain amount, because we were judging the stuff from 2019's sort of content. But every so often, like in that podcast or in Podcastle, they'd say, "Oh, it's a difficult year, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Oh, people of 2019. Oh, yeah, I'm sure it seemed difficult at the time." so there's none of that, which is sort of odd. But yeah. Yes, so that's where I am. So I guess, yeah, I've got some No Such Thing as Fish to catch up on. I've got some of the podcasts we were doing the jury stuff on, which I think, because there was those two with the fiction podcast, and there was also Speculative Spaces and Breaking the Glass Slipper, which were kind of the non-fictiony talking about things one. So those both quite good. I'm not sure if the one's going, because it quite often was based on live events, so I have to check that. But Breaking the Glass Slipper I think still is, so I might check out a bit more of those. And again, that's quite conversational. And it's not even like a timeline, you have to remember stuff, they're just chatting about different things, so that might be quite good as well.
I put his upper thigh the wrong way around.
Oh no.
Going to be some dismantling in my future. But otherwise he's done.
Apart from his legs the wrong way around.
His legs the wrong way around, and I need to do the detailing. But
I've found with the cross stitch, sometimes I'll do a stitch and I'll look when I go out later, I'll put an extra stitch right in it, and I have to unpick that whole bit. Which sometimes it works fine, but once I got really tangled up, I just had to cut it and like tie it at the back. So I'm trying not to do that. But yeah, these things are fun.
Yes.
Did you have any like podcasts or videos? I know you've not been listening to podcasts.
My podcast listening is actually I'm way behind on all of mine.
That's fair enough.
Because I listen to them on my commute, and I can't listen to them when I'm working. I can listen to music, but I can't listen to anyone talking, because I'd rather be listening to them talking than doing my work. And obviously my work involves words a lot.
Yeah, I suppose mine's a bit more, parts of my job can be quite routine, and then if I get to a tricky bit I can just stop it, or if I'm doing emails, or if I'm doing the bit where I'm checking. But if I'm doing the bit up to the bit where I'm checking, particularly if it's the very standard stuff, I can just... And also, at first I was trying to drown out children's TV.
That's fair enough.
And then later when you were going to work and he was going to nursery, I was in the house on my own a lot, so it was nice to have some voices.
Yeah, I just can't work, so...
my brain distracts me sometimes.
So it's the one I listen to mainly in sequence, which is JMR's Explain the X-Men, because X-Men. I'm up to September with them. Some of the other ones I listen to piecemeal because they're sort of separate topics or topic-based ones, or rather than.
What about videos? So you've been watching videos.
I mainly watch things about painting.
You watched those cooking ones.
True.
Remember in first lockdown?
True. Yes, first lockdown.
Our son got really into like cooking videos.
We were watching.
You had a favourite like YouTube chef or whatever.
We were watching a lot of. It was the Epicurious channel. We were watching various entertaining. It was interesting cooking. And then for a bit, I've been watching Chef Frank, who was one of the chefs on it. His cooking channel occasionally, because why not? I like cooking.
Oh, I'll tell you it now because it's past. So when it was obviously the run up to your birthday.
Yeah. And
I thought, I'll try and do something special, but we can't see people or go places. So I mean, obviously I got you some good presents and stuff. But one thing I had thought, because you're watching all the Chef Frank stuff, was like, can I get to go to like a shout out or send some sort of personalised message or something? But I could not figure out how to contact him on social media. And I was like, I don't know if he's even going into the place where he works because like it's in New York and they're pretty locked down. And I was like, I don't know enough about this to figure out how to do it. But one thing I thought was that, I half composed like an email or some sort of message to him and go, my husband and son are watching your videos all the time. Could you send a message or something? I'm sure they'd like it, but yeah.
Well, I appreciate the thought.
Yeah, and I did something that's a little bit easier by contacting a person we already know who does art, which that also was good.
That was good, yes. But yes, so there's been... But mostly I watch painting videos, because I like to paint.
This is true.
And it's nice to see how to do things and get technique ideas, and then despair that I'm never going to be as good as the people I'm watching. So,
but they weren't as good as
no, true, point. But I still can despair.
Thank you. I suppose I've only been watching beginners videos for this stuff, but that's mostly just because I'm specifically like, how do I do this?
I don't watch the really, really fancy stuff because that would just make me put down my paints and cry.
I don't know if there was fancy stuff for this. I just would literally go onto YouTube and be like, starting cross stitch or this, and then just like watch like a couple of short videos. This is what I do with like sewing and fabric stuff. I'm a bit like, I just need to know this specific thing, so you just show me that and nothing else. And I don't know. And also, like, when it comes to sewing, like, there's fancy stuff out there because, like, fancy clothes exist.
Yes.
And textile art. But it's so different that,
So, yes. I think all in all, 2020, for all it's brought us, I mean, I don't think it was too bad a year for us.
I think we've been very fortunate, I think, as a household. We're fortunate that we're both employed and have been fully employed throughout. We're fortunate that we haven't had to do homeschooling.
Oh God, yeah.
Although I know part of me, for a while I was a bit like, well, he's young enough that he doesn't need homeschooling, and he's been fairly resilient, really.
Yeah.
I think, which is good. But again, he's young enough that, yeah. But on the other hand, it's a bit like if he was older, we could give him a book to read, and he could entertain himself for longer. So I think it's a bit against that pros and cons. Like we've just got him to worry about, and other people have, like more children, siblings.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, that's more children to sort out. But on the other hand, it's like, can they entertain each other a bit? But I guess again, that depends on the family thing. So and we've been quite fortunate that we have had my family helping out a bit while that was allowed, and like we had childcare while it was allowed and while it felt safe. It doesn't feel safe enough now, so fair enough. I guess that's the thing, it's just kind of like going between how safe it feels, but on the other hand we are safe here and generally fine here, and obviously our marriage is fine because this has been alright, and I think the main issue we have the family is toddlery stuff, which is tricky, I think, generally.
Yeah, I mean, that's just because he's difficult to communicate with, because he's a toddler. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, we've been lucky, and I
think that we've been fortunate. Also, we've been able to keep ourselves fairly safe for the most part. I mean, you had to self-isolate for a bit, but that was just due to contact tracing. You didn't feel like you'd actually had...
No, I mean that was just the app. So.
Yeah, well,
and even in the libraries, we've been, we've got all our procedures, and even when we had people in the buildings, everyone that was coming into the buildings I was working with were very, very good about following the. I mean, let's be honest. I know staff in other libraries that had problems, so it's I was lucky in that regard, but So yes, I mean, 2020 is now gone. We're now in 2021. The only way is up, as Yaz once said.
I don't know how much that statement had been peer reviewed.
That is a fair point.
It's very much the hypothesis stage.
Yeah. But it's a year to look forward to. We can.
Nothing else. We've got a lot more things to read.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There's looking forward to seeing people again. Finally actually having people in the house, getting some of these models I've been painting on the table and getting some games in.
I feel like I want to figure out which cities we know like a few people and then just go there and be like, hello, we're coming to your city. Just entertain us. It doesn't have to be fancy, just, I don't know, give us a bit of food and like chat to us or something. Entertain the toddler.
I would apologise to Manel about if the Yaz song gets stuck in your head. But I
Did
could
you tell him about the sea shanties?
I could have put sea shanties on.
Which song? Oh, the Only Way Is Out, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he's been, in these training sessions he's been doing with his colleagues, he has been earworming them with sea shanties from TikTok. Although, in fairness, I did earworm him with that originally, so... but Al earwormed me, so maybe...
I think it's a perfectly good... it's an excellent example of communities on social media that you just don't think about, and viral media and community... You know, but
and people jumping in on stuff and sharing it,
yeah,
and joining.
But if you really want to be earwormed, go find the Weller Man on TikTok and YouTube, and you'll thank me for it.
I mean, people might have already seen it. People want to get to this on YouTube.
Yes, true. But Manel might not.
They have a few more hits than we do.
True, fair point. 7.2 million when I was doing it yesterday.
Okay. You just keep counting it each day.
Well, it was quite interesting because when I did it on last Thursday, it was 6.4 million.
Well, no, I remember you saying
it was 6.4 million. So, yeah. No, it's 7.2 million. It's fine, Manel. If you don't go and look for it, I'll make sure that I'll put it over tomorrow when we're on World of Warcraft.
Are you doing anything nautical?
Possibly. We can always see about something. I've now guaranteed he's not turning up on World of Warcraft tomorrow night. They all remember when I used to sing pirate nursery rhymes when we were doing certain raid bosses.
Yeah. Okay, well I think that's probably...
I think that's a good place to stop it before I...
Yes, before you start doing them. Yes, so thank you for...
Thank you for joining us for this ramble on things.
It's been 4 weeks now, which I think the last time I had 4 weeks was when it was summer and my job repeated the busiest time of year again. I hope it doesn't happen this year, but if it happens it might be July, I don't even know.
Who knows? Anyway, thank you for sticking with us and joining us. We will be back soon with... We need another...
We need to do a planning session to decide what things we're talking about. I think we're aiming to go back to being 2 weekly, though.
Yes.
We will update things on YouTube a bit, because I think I got a bit behind with sort of writing the description stuff.
Yeah,
we just need to get YouTube a bit updated, and I have been sharing them on Twitter in a very sort of random and sporadic sort of way. But yeah.
So yes, we will. If anyone has any suggestions for topics they'd like us to talk about, please let us know.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something we haven't seen or read, then we probably can't. But you know,
depends on what it is.
Yeah.
You know,
there's no guarantees.
No,
is all I'm
but
saying.
if it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus,
that's like most of the things, isn't it?
Yeah. Then you know, we don't have access to the library though to get any books. So we have enough books. I did come home with a big pile of books. 2 big piles of books. We have many piles of books in the house.
I saw that there are a few around, There's a lot of stuff I might want to read, so... But I think you brought them home for you to read also.
Well, I brought them home because otherwise they're just going to sit in the library doing nothing.
Yeah, and also we just had Christmas as well, so that's usually a good time for a book haul. So yeah.
Anyway. Bye-bye! We'll see you again soon.